I had a fantastic time with Sandrine today. I've been trying to schedule this one for a long time, and it finally happened. We learned about her time as a Harvard Business School professor and what she teaches in her luxury marketing classes, her journey through a remote working environment over the last year and a half with COVID, as well as what launching a brand in China is like and what you should be thinking about. If you're trying to learn from the best today, listen up. And if you enjoyed the episode, be a friend, tell a friend, like and subscribe, and we'll do our best to keep bringing you the best people. Bye, everybody.
Influencers, inspiration, and Instagram. This is Earned by Tribe Dynamics. Here's Conor Begley.
Welcome to Earned, everybody. Today we are going to learn from one of the top luxury marketing professors in the world, Sandrine Crener. Did I got that last name correct, right?
Yes.
Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to finally have you on. It's been so long in the making.
Thank you so much, Conor. I'm, very honored to be invited in your show. And as you know, it's always a pleasure to discuss with you. So thank you so much.
Of course. It's I'm excited for today because I feel like I have a lot of questions. Hopefully I can go through the same kind of coursework that your students go through over many, many weeks in 1 hour. So hopefully we can cover all of that.
Let's try.
So for those that don't know Sandrine, she's currently the program director at the Harvard Business School, specifically focused on executive education. And then you also teach a graduate course in luxury marketing there. Prior to that, you were at the International University of Monaco, most recently as the dean of the business school there. Assuming that I read correctly, I believe you have 6 different degrees, including undergrad in mathematics, master's in management, international marketing, business administration, public administration, and executive leadership or educational leadership. You have a PhD, as well as you've spent a lot of time studying China, which I'm excited to ask some questions about there, as well as written a few Harvard business case studies, although none about Tribe yet, which eventually there will be a time. But yeah, that's it's a really impressive track record. Congrats on what you've accomplished.
Wow, thank you.
It's weird when you read it all out at one time, right?
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
So we're going to cover a variety of topics today, right? Case studies, education, luxury marketing, China. But one of the topics that I wanted to cover, so obviously we've transitioned to a fully remote workforce as a company. So, and I've started to see some of the effects there, and I think there's a lot of people that are spending time studying that. And the perspective that you have obviously is on the education side. Now, it's a different type of education, right? This isn't, grammar school, but at the same time, you guys did in a very unexpected and sudden way have to change the way that you teach. And then, there's been the resurgence of the Delta variant more recently. I'd love to hear about the last 18 months, what you've learned during that process, what the plan is moving forward. And then maybe what was surprising about that, right, as you went through it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have to start a little bit earlier than that because before the pandemic, I decided to start teaching online because I could see that online teaching was becoming more and more important and prominent, and to me it was kind of the way to go. So I kind of challenged myself and sign up to teach my luxury marketing course online at Harvard Extension School. And little did I know that that investment would become so important because just a few months later, actually, COVID broke up. So I think I come from this place where I kind of recognized that online learning was becoming very important, and what I realized giving this first course was that actually online learning and teaching work. It's working very well actually, and this was the first takeaway for me. I signed up for that course. I was kind of a little bit skeptical, especially being at HBS where we are so proud of our residential program and we are really offer more than education. It's even a real experience on campus, both for our full-time MBAs but also for exec ed participants. So I was coming, from the opposite of the spectrum, so to speak. But then, we had to realize that, we had to adapt with COVID, and at HBS it was kind of a huge endeavor, a huge effort to train our faculty, acquire the technology and the tools, to support online teaching. And I think we really did outstanding. Our faculty and staff did an amazing job, because we were really able to pivot very fast and very successfully. So I would say that online learning is here to stay now, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it can complement as residential education as well. So it's very interesting where we are going to go in the future, with those hybrid model, with maybe live sessions that are supplemented by acronym content, self-paced learning. So it's going to be easier, to individualized and pluralized education. And what I mean is, like, we can cater to the individual needs of individual learners, adapt to their teaching learning style, and provide more support, and hopefully keep them longer in the system, and have them graduate or complete their requirements, because there are a lot of issues, especially with undergrad, like so many people are not completing their degrees and things like this. So I think the technology and mixing all the tools and the different teaching methods will be very valuable moving forward.
I love that idea of the individualized learning model, right? Because I think that if you weren't forced into this, it would have taken much, much longer to develop those tools and those competencies and that comfort in actually being able to teach in a different way. In the same way that, I was very much I thought being in the office was super, super critical. And I still think that there's a lot of collaboration and there are a lot of things to be gained by being in person. But at the same time, I've realized that you can be incredibly productive from home or remotely, and that the technology is there to allow us to do it. So that makes sense. To talk about this education topic a little bit more, obviously you seem to be kind of a lover of learning, right? You've certainly spent more time in school than I have. So tell me, what is it about kind of the classroom that draws you in so much?
Yeah, so I don't know. I doesn't feel like I have any merit. I always love school.
Yeah.
I think I am a very curious person, so I love to learn. I read a lot, and I read about a variety of topics. So for instance, I'm a foodie, so I read about food, about restaurant, but also agribusiness, companies, innovation in that field. But then it leads me to nutrition and health and wellness. So then I read about education, because I'm an educator. So all the strategies of the business schools globally, and where is our industry going, and the latest research in learning and teaching, all those type of things. And then I'm also studying luxury brand across many different sectors. So you have the usual suspect, like fashion or jewelry, or leather goods. But I also study yachts and hotels and private jets, and even high-end medical services, and discover
Mm.
this amazing company that is called Private Medical. So I really enjoyed learning. So I think when I was young, I studied first in a bachelor degree, then in a master, then a few years later I did my MBA, and then I did my PhD. It was kind of something natural. Today I attend courses at HBS. I attend my programs, and I also teach, or I follow a number of webinars, online courses, and I read a lot. So can learn. I mean, this is what is, I think, fascinating today, and especially with the new technology, and learning is taking new shapes, new forms, and this is also, I think, something that will reshape education and higher ed in the future. Like, people might not stay in those long degrees, but become more lifelong learner and accumulate credentials, accumulate short courses. I mean, you name it. But yeah, there are just different ways now to learn. And as I said, it's like you can find the best way for you. So that could be reading, or that could be listening, or that could be just doing. And as a professor, then you have this new flexibility to really pluralize the way you teach, with the live session, but also the asynchronous session, the recorded session, and new types of activities that are now available with technology.
Yeah, I mean, there are a variety of technology companies that are, attempting to fill in those gaps, right, or provide alternative ways of learning. Particularly, it seems like undergraduate is an area that people are really trying to service, right, or create alternatives for. I saw a statistic recently. It was actually quite surprising, but there's been, overall decline in undergraduate, people going into undergraduate degrees, but where it's pronounced is in men for some reason. So now it's fully, I believe it's 60-40 or over 60-40 in terms of female male split for undergraduate degrees. It's interesting. I'm curious to see where it goes over time. At the same time, and I'm kind of getting on a tangent here, but I think that the value of a top tier education, at least from an external signaling perspective, is perhaps stronger than it's ever been, right? So you didn't used to walk around and say, hey, I went to Harvard, and have that on your chest, right? Like, that wasn't a thing. But now, because of LinkedIn, right, that's there all the time. And that's another part of your professional branding. So it's interesting. It's just, there's a lot of flux in the category, it feels like, category being education.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting observation, Conor. I personally believe that we are living in a branded world. I mean, we see that, no, those brands are becoming more and more important. They create, those universe ecosystem, and people trust brands, and they develop, deep relationship with their favorite brands. And this is something that we will see in education, in higher ed, meaning that moving forward, the value of the brands, the power of those educational brands is going to be even more important. And I would say technology and online is accelerating that, because if you are a student anywhere on the planet, and you want to study any topic,
Yep.
you want to study it online, then you have a diversity of provider that is really huge. You mentioned you have other universities and MOOCs, but then if you really want, let's say, to invest and maybe learn from the best, and you have a class that is available from Harvard or MIT or Stanford or whatever, and if those schools are providing this quality, because this is what we stand for, no, like the quality of the education that we provide, the best research, the best faculty, then why would you go to an alternative provider?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So to me, it's possible that in the future, those Ivy League schools will have millions of students globally.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, why, if you can, again, because the biggest problem used to be access, right? So if I wanted to see the best professor in the world, there's only so many seats in the room, right? There's only so many people that can relocate. Let's actually talk about local education for a minute, because I think you have some background there as well, right? And I remember that you said at one time one of your proudest moments was being able to kind of help revive or be a part of the revival story of a school. Can you tell me about that? And then how is it doing today? Like how do you see that changing for them over time? Like how are they going to be impacted? I guess we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, no, of course. So you're right. I mean, everything that happened to me, I think in my career,
Yeah.
happened a little bit by chance, and I got introduced to this college that was based in Monaco. It was an American college, American type of education, based in Monaco, and this school was really struggling and
Oh wow.
basically went bankrupt. Uh, and my husband and I, my husband was in education. I mean, yeah, was in education as well, and with a group of friends and partners, I mean, we decided to take over the school and try to revive it. So
Mhm.
we rebranded it and really rebuild it from the ground up. And yeah, that was very rewarding. I really had a lot of fun doing that. And when you develop, I mean, you know that you are an entrepreneur. You start a business, and it's really your baby, and you think about it all the time, and so that was very rewarding because we got very good result very very fast, like being ranked as the top MBAs and programs in Europe. um, we had amazing students that also we were able to place at in great corporations around the world. The MBA, some years we had 100% placement
Wow.
rate at graduation. So that was very fulfilling, and to see the success of our student. So yeah, I'm very proud of that, and yeah, very nostalgic of those years
What
as well.
what were the steps you took? So you came in, it's bankrupt, right? What were the big changes that you made that took it from there to being one of the top MBA programs in Europe and, I would assume not bankrupt, right? So what were some of the steps that you got to get it? Because it sounds like it was both a reputational resurgence as well as even a financial resurgence as well.
Yeah, so we I think we had a vision, and we really wanted to create. I mean, to create an institution with let's say that was demanding and that was providing a high quality of education. That was very important to us. Something that was good and something that we could be proud of. And we had this idea of creating a kind of a boutique university, a kind of so very small class size, very high ratio of faculty to students. So we had one faculty for 10 students, individual.
Oh, wow.
So that was very important to us. So we kind of created this environment, very nurturing. So we had the systems in place and the people and the resources, the services in place to support our students. Most of them were coming from abroad. We only had 5% of local students. So it means that the school was home to them, really, like,
Hmm.
where they were living and developing friendships. And so we had this vision for something that was very international, very nurturing. As I said, individual attention, really trying to help each person to succeed, and in their own way, recognizing that not everybody is the same, and that you don't necessarily need to be a math genius, to succeed in life, and people have different talents and everything. um, and but still, having very good programs, and having some very strong academic requirements. So that was important. And then, if you train your student well, then they should perform well once they are in the market. And I think we were really trying to develop those soft skills. I mean, obviously the hard skill, the education was there, but I think what we also try to teach our students were those very important, soft skills, EQ. And because they live with students from all over the world, and also faculty from all over the world, we have professors from 20 different nationalities, and we have probably students from 80 plus nationalities. So you have to adapt and adjust and be more open-minded and listen and question your own belief, your own behaviors. And at the end of the process, I think, people are probably better individuals, better citizens, better team workers, better listeners. So this is why we could place our students in top jobs, top corporations. I mean, they really like them and would come back for more years after years. And this is how we got those very high placement rates. So that was really rewarding. And as you mentioned, undergraduate education. So we had both undergrad and grad, but you see those students coming when they are 18 and still like teenagers, and over the 4 years of undergrad studies, they really change and transform and become, adults, young professionals. And that was kind of mind-blowing. So very rewarding to see them now, very successful people. Many are entrepreneurs, and with families, good people. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's I mean, from 18 to call it 22 is a hugely transformative age. And then particularly the first 10 years after that as well, right? So I'm surprised that none of them have been able to talk you into some entrepreneurial venture that they're thinking about. Has anybody tried to pitch you on that yet?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a question that um, people ask me this question a lot. That's very interesting.
Huh.
So yes, sometimes I think about it, but actually, I'm an educator at heart, and I know what are my values and what I like and what motivates me. And when I receive an email from my former students, and they tell me, I mean, recently one of my students emailed me because he had created school himself, and he said, I was so inspired by what you did in Monaco that I had this in mind, and look, now I'm creating my own school. And wow, that's really I mean, I'm very happy about that. That's very humbling, and but very I don't know, it feels like I'm doing something right. So I want to continue in that direction. And if I were to become an entrepreneur again, which is always kind of an intriguing idea, I would probably work in education as well, because this is really my passion. I mean, I love luxury brand. I study them, and it's kind of. And what we did in Monaco actually is really at the crossroad between education and higher ed, because it was really like a luxury brand for higher education. Really, this kind of haute couture, the haute couture analogy would fit very well
Yeah.
with what we tried to do at that time.
That was, I mean, as you described it, without obviously having been there, the 1 to 10 ratio, right? Having this international appeal. Obviously, Monaco has incredible branding just as a city, right? So it felt to me like, oh, this must have been like a luxury experience, right?
Exactly.
And so talk to me. I'd actually be curious to get your definition. I've got a bunch of questions because I want to talk about the Harvard business case studies and others. But I remember hearing Bernard Arnault describe luxury, right? What he considered luxury to be. I'd be curious what your definition is. Like, what is your definition of luxury?
That's interesting. Well, nobody agrees on the definition of luxury. Super hard question.
It is.
And especially today, I think, it seems like everything is luxury. And because everything is luxury, nothing is really luxury anymore.
Yeah.
You see the luxury brands going downstream, like, to scale and kind of, I think, moving a little bit away from a pure luxury model. And you see the premium brands and, streetwear and fashion brands trying to move up and, you know, let's say, use the luxury playbook to premiumize their offering and, build the brand equity. So, yeah, so, this is the topic of my class, like what is luxury. And once again, it's very difficult. So I would say, there are a few, let's say, characteristics of luxury brands that, everybody kind of recognize, like the quality, the excellence, the craftsmanship, higher service, higher design. You have exclusivity, you have very high price points, you have elements of scarcity, of heritage, all those things. So let's say those are a little bit the minimum, because you could, check those boxes and still not be a luxury brand, because actually the luxury status, so to speak, is given to you by the perception of consumers. So it's not like you I mean, I know many brands do that today, but they say, well, we are a luxury brand, but that doesn't mean that they are a luxury brand. Really, something that you can decide for yourself. So so there are, let's say, those elements, but then, luxury means different things for different people, because it's depending on the context, depending on your culture, depending on where you are in terms of social class or things like this. Luxury is going to mean something totally different.
Yeah.
So that's why it's something that is very very difficult. But what we can recognize is, like, I mean, in any type of sector, probably there is a luxury player, a pure luxury player, that is kind of implementing a pure luxury strategy. And I use those examples with my students to kind of tell them, okay, so this is the top of the pyramid. This is kind of, the genuine luxury playbook. And it's kind of easy to say, well, this brand belongs to this category, and then the others, or, we can discuss. And the frontiers, the boundaries are very blurred. So, and once again, there are also, huge cultural differences. So the first thing is, like, I think people typically underestimate how different a luxury strategy is. So that's the first thing, and this is what I try to teach my students, like, fighting the stereotypes, and also showing them that it's different.
Yeah.
And then there are huge cultural differences that still exist, and maybe that are going to be even more important, in the future. We were all thinking a few years ago that there was this kind of global luxury consumer that was the same across, across geographies. But I just did a survey with colleagues of mine, and we kind of found out that those cultural differences are still there, very much alive. And so once again, luxury is going to be appealing for different reasons for different customers. Like, in China, it's more elitism. In France, it will be more about heritage. In the US, people will be probably looking more at, exclusivity, or, things like this. So you have to communicate differently. You have to emphasize, different attributes in your value proposition, the benefits that you are providing your customer.
Yeah, it certainly will. I mean, you have to imagine it would vary by culture, right? Because so much for me, so much of luxury is defined by like I can, like you said, exclusivity. I can have something that someone else doesn't have, right? Whether that's via scarcity or price point or distribution or whatever it is, right? And so I remember having a discussion with somebody. They're like, we don't, because we talk about it a lot in the context of influencers, right? Which is like, and I think historically, the mindset has changed. But call it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a lot of the luxury brands said, "Hey, I know this is really important, but like, I don't want that person to be talking about me, right?" And because those aren't my customers, right? The people that listen to them are not buying my products. And I was like, well, what makes you think, like, why do people want to buy those products? They want to buy them because I can buy them and they cannot, right? And so creating demand amongst consumers that cannot get access to your products is actually, I think, fairly critical, right? To success. It's not just about, okay, I only want to reach the people that can afford me or can access me or can whatever. Um, yeah, I want to take your course now
Yeah.
and actually think about it more deeply.
So I'm not sure that you create demand. You create aspiration, which
Okay.
which is
Yeah.
something different because you know. So another thing that I teach in my class is like we are talking about those stereotypes, and I'm going to come back to just what you said. Try to respond to
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
this comment, but a lot of people see luxury as conspicuous consumption. Basically,
Okay.
like the big logo, it has to be in your face. You have to recognize it, you have to see it, because basically, once again, the stereotype is like people buy luxury to show off.
Yep.
And
Yep.
but this is a very reductive perception of luxury, and I would say it's just the tip of the iceberg, and there is
Hmm.
of what I call invisible luxury consumption, or stealth luxury, that you don't see on purpose, and you don't know about because you are not a core consumer. Because
Hmm.
to create demand, people have to be willing. Let's say they need to want your brand and your product, but they also need to be able to pay for it.
Yes.
You see what I mean? So you have to have both. So if people cannot buy your products, then there is no interest, no need to target them or to communicate about your brand to them, because maybe they will never afford that. And I think this is what some invisible, like the invisible or very quiet, those brands that use quiet signals. So those invisible luxury brands, this is what they want to do. They don't want to target an audience that do not belong to their target market. They don't want to use mass marketing, or invest a huge amount of money in mass marketing, because I mean it defeats the purpose. So it's more like they communicate to a very narrow segment, and they are very focused. And this is why word of mouth and things like that, private events, they use those type of marketing activities to recruit clients, so that they only target those ones that can pay and want those type of products. So this is why I think a lot about what I call the tyranny of social media.
Mm.
And I think a lot of those, what I call vanity metrics, like, oh, look how many followers I have, or look all those people talking about my brand. For some luxury brands, I cannot help thinking that some of those people may never be real luxury consumers in the future. But some of them are very vocal about the brand, and they love the brand, and then they could they react sometimes to what the brand is doing, and they say, well, you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't say that, on this, on that, and that could backlash a little bit. So I think this is an idea that is intriguing to me. And I think that in the future, probably some brand will go step back, and try to be a little bit more discreet, or do things that are more invisible instead of, and with all those problems of inequality and things like this, and could also controversies. There might be an interest. I don't know. It just
Yeah, no, absolutely.
that's interesting because you mentioned that, like, yeah, from some perspective, and for mass brands, I think that makes sense. Like, being visible and trying to recruit as many people as possible, and that makes sense. For a luxury strategy, to a certain point, maybe, but I think at some point maybe you reach, um, yeah, maybe it becomes unproductive. I don't know. Just my thought.
Yeah, no, it's a real question, right?
I
And I think that
study that in the future.
we we've definitely had the luxury. We've definitely had the opportunity, right? So I think we work now with 5 of the 10 largest luxury brands in the world. Work very extensively, LVMH, Kering, on down the list. And there's two things that I think about, right? I do think desirability matters, right? And perceived desirability, other people desire this, right? And I can have it. I do think that matters. I think it's pretty significant. But I think the other thing that's really important, and where we did see brands tend to kind of stick their heads in the sand historically, is it's not necessarily about targeting or promotion, right? As much as it is about, really for me, almost clienteling, right? So what would happen is you would have somebody like a Jeffree Star who has pink hair, tattoos, drives a pink Lamborghini, right? And then saying like, oh, I don't want Jeffree to be the face of my brand. You say, well, the reality is that he is, whether you want him to or not, right? He has tens of millions of fans. He is the number one influencer for Chanel, the number one influencer for Dior, the number one influencer for Gucci. And he also happens to be the largest customer for Gucci by revenue globally, right? And so for him, and if you actually look at the majority of the people that are in this ecosystem, they're not somebody that you would choose to be the face of your upcoming campaign. But they're often, consumers, sometimes very large consumers. And I think the people that follow them are following them because they're inherently very interested in luxury products, luxury branding. And so it's less about saying like, hey, I want to go out and target this social media personality, and more about the fact that, Gucci will have around 13,000 influencers that will create close to 300,000 pieces of content about them each year, just in the US. And 95+% of that is people just talking about Gucci because they love Gucci and because they're into the products, and more than likely because they're consumers of that products. And I think there's frankly historically been a disconnect between what luxury brands want their customers to be and who the luxury brands customers actually are, right? I think there's a big disconnect between and particularly between branding and actual end customer profile. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how it evolves over time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think what you do is super important. I mean, as you said,
Yeah.
it's not about what those brands want, or as you say, the demographic or whatever. It's like, with social media, I mean, the influencers or even consumers are taking the power. So it's like,
Yeah.
you cannot control or anything. And I think in that way, brands have done the good thing about, like, trying to collaborate with those people, and instead of antagonizing, and, uh,
Yeah.
just not looking at it. So no, on that thing, I on that aspect, I totally agree with you. And what you do is super important, and I kind of, it's a no-brainer that those brands should be working with your organization, and especially with the trends of the democratization of luxury and the massification of luxury. Those brands, we are coming from a system where they had only a few stores, and they were accessible just to a few customers globally, to a situation now where, you know, anybody can have access, anybody can see them. They have hundreds of stores everywhere on the planet, so it's not a problem of accessibility anymore. So just by the sheer scale of those business, and I think this is probably one of the a big shift in luxury recently. I think luxury brands have understood and have found a way to be super big while retaining, you know, their prestige or their desirability and things like this. So this is kind of, I think, this has been a revelation, I think, for them, because they were on a different model. And just in parenthesis, this is why, you know, Harvard, MIT, all those schools, you know, I think in the future will be able to have millions of students while keeping, you know, their prestige and aura and everything. Because you see it, you know, in other sectors. But what I am, so yeah, I agree with that. The only thing is, like, you know, managing this crowd on social media, and you know, the problem is, like, the more you expose yourself to so many different people, you have to be ready and willing to manage, you know, the backlash when it happens. And we see that, you know, with social media, we see that with some people, we see that in China, we see that, you know, in many different ways, where, you know, consumer come back to the brand and say, we don't like you to do that, we don't want you to do that, you shouldn't be doing that. And I think this is a threat, you know, to innovation and creativity, because typically fashion brand and luxury brand have been a kind of the forefront, no, of innovation, and even sometimes social innovation, like pushing the boundaries, no. And then suddenly you have to be very cautious about what you say, what you do, because there is always somebody that you could offend, you know. So yeah, you understand what I mean? It's like,
yeah, totally.
A double-edged sword, you know.
Yeah,
So
that was the exact word that I had, the double-edged sword. And I think it's I think just almost from an evolutionary perspective, right? We've never been exposed to so many opinions all at the same time, right? And people have a hard time conceptualizing, like, oh, I've had these 3 negative comments about this particular initiative or whatever it is. But in the context of the number of consumers that you have as a brand, right, those 3 comments are very, very small. And then you kind of pair that with the pace and rapidity with which something can become a big deal, right? Like how fast it can accelerate into the kind of national attention. It's tough. It's a tough environment to navigate. So yeah, it's I'm glad I'm leading a B2B brand and not a B2C brand. Much fewer opinions, which is nice. You mentioned China there, and I want to spend a little bit of time on that. So I want to spend time both on China, as well as, you know, you spend a lot of time researching, right? Whether it's the, you know, business case studies or your just own published research. Talk to me about, you know, what's if there was one research article that you've written recently that we should read, what would it be? Or one case study, what would it be? And what would we learn from it?
so you mean about China specifically?
I threw a bunch of questions in there at the same time, which is
Yeah,
feedback I've gotten that's bad. So I want to talk about China next, but before that, I want to talk about research, and this can be about any topic.
okay.
So let's say any topic you've written about in the last 5 years. And I know you've got a book coming up eventually too that we might end up reading. But what would be the one article you'd recommend everybody read, or case study?
Well, that's you know, I'm so the last case study I published with my colleague Jill Avery from HBS, and with 2 colleagues from Europe, Marie-Cécile Cervelon at EDEC, and Ranjit from London. So we wrote a case about Supreme, and so the last one is always the most interesting because it's fresh in your mind, and then so I'm going to tell you why I'm I write cases, and maybe it will illustrate why I say this one. So typically, at HBS we use cases, the case method. So it means that professors do not teach or lecture. It's like they teach through the case method, the case discussion. So what typically I think people do, and at least this is what I do, is like, okay, you want to teach a lesson, so you have the case is the pedagogical tool. So when I created this luxury marketing course, so I knew what I wanted to teach, like, in those 15 sessions, those 15 classes, I say, okay, those are the topics that I want to discuss. And then you try to find a company or brand, that kind of illustrate that point. So, for instance, I wrote a case on Stella McCartney because I wanted to discuss sustainability because this is such a hot topic, and Stella at that time was, I think the brand to go to and to explain, what they were doing, and it was really genuine, and so this is how I got to choose that case. I wrote a case on cultural differences, and then I chose Mauboussin, which is a French luxury jewelry brand, and I did that because at the time they were struggling in the US, so they were super successful in Europe, in Japan, in Middle East, North Africa, but didn't go well in the US, and that was very intriguing. So reach out to the CEO and ask him, hey, I'm developing this class, I want to touch on those cultural differences issues. Would you be willing to write a case, to let us write a case about your company so that we can teach an important lesson to our students? And so I have I hope I have good knowledge of the industry and what's going on with companies. So I typically have a topic in mind that I want to teach, and then I try to find the best example, the best a company that will exemplify best practices on that specific topic. So this is how I chose my cases so far. And now I'm thinking of developing a new course on what I call premiumization strategies and aspirational marketing. So how actually non-luxury brands are using the luxury playbook to premiumize their offering and to build brand equity. And for that class that I'm developing, so I have to develop new cases, obviously, because I'm teaching new lessons. Supreme was kind of an interesting case. How their strategy is really kind of inspired by luxury tactics, and so I tried to show that in the case. It's an interesting example because today, Supreme is a very cool brand, very successful, and it's been in the media a lot. But people and a lot of, I think, new fashion brand startups, they use Supreme as a model, but they forget that Supreme is 30 years old, so it's it takes a lot of time to
wasn't developed overnight.
Get there, and so those are also the lessons that we try to teach in that case. In terms of research,
To go back to Supreme, I have a question for you. Do you think that Supreme will have the same level of prestige that it has today in 30 years?
Wow, that's a tough question. It really depends on the strategy they have and how they execute the strategy. So I think what something that is often overlooked with Supreme is like they really do quality stuff. Products, it's high quality, it's resistant, it's durable, and there is also obviously there is a very specific aesthetic, and also, I think they put a lot of thought, into their design, and there are multi levels of meanings and cultural references. So, to somebody that is not knowledgeable about them, about their roots, and maybe they don't see that, but their core consumers are really kind of looking for it and try to decipher each collection and what it means and what are the references. And so just like the Easter eggs
Yeah.
in Taylor Swift marketing, but this is working,
Yeah.
this is amazing. So
Yeah.
I think if they stick to their model, they stick to their identity, to their brand DNA, and especially if they stick to this quality. I think this is very important. That quality, as I said, in the cloth, but also in the design, in the meaning, in the substance, of the design. And they stay true to their model. Yeah, there is, I mean, today they only have 11, no, 13 stores. So it's like super small. And so many people probably will want to buy, Supreme goods. And today they can't. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think that they can grow very successfully. And I think they are in good hands. I hope, VF Corp will manage the brand well, but it seems like it. So, if they don't stray too far.
Yeah. I remember hearing, because I've spoken to a lot of current and former LVMH, employees and team members. And the thing that I hear consistently that's quite interesting is, they're thinking 50 years from now, right? Not 2 quarters from now or a quarter from now or next year. So it'd be interesting to see if they can kind of maintain that same, what got them to where they are today over time.
Yeah.
I don't know them well enough to comment one way or the other, but I think quality of product, like you said, matters a lot in the long run.
Yeah, they have to stay true to who they are, the brand
Mhm.
DNA, what they do. I think this is very important because this is why people trust brand, no? They choose brand
Yep.
because for a set of criteria, and then you have to stick to that DNA so that you keep your customer base and hopefully grow it and recruit more people. But you have to be consistent. And this is why those luxury brands, I think, have survived for so many years. They are very consistent. They have a very strong identity, strong brand DNA, and they just stick to it. And each time you see a private equity buying a luxury brand, they typically change the brand DNA to
Yep.
more appealing or more relevant or more modern or whatever, and typically doesn't end well.
No, it works well in the short term, right? But it plays out in the long run.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to say names. I think a lot of people know who they are. But okay, so I'm using way too much of your time. So I'm going to give you two options, okay, on China. So I'm going to give you two different questions. You choose which one you want to answer. So the first question, I've never done this before, so this will be fun. So the first question is, given recent disruptions that have happened in the Chinese tech and consumer industry, right? So you're seeing, right, obviously China's cracked down on a number of tech companies. There have been some backlashes in terms of consumer companies that speak out against China. I'd be curious if you've studied at all the broader impacts of that on kind of US and European businesses and desirability to kind of work and do business in China. So that's one option. The second option is kind of the reverse. So if you were a brand trying to launch and succeed in China, and let's assume that you're, an established brand that's doing well in one of, either the US or Europe, we'll kind of limit to those geographies. What would be your recommendations to that brand? So pick whichever question you want. Your call.
Okay. Well, they are a little bit linked together because I guess you cannot ignore this context. So um, you know China is the first luxury market globally. So it's a market that you cannot ignore.
Mm-hmm.
It's a market you don't want to mess up with.
No,
Um,
that's a double-edged sword for
uh,
sure.
so China has always been a kind of a difficult market. No, the language
Yeah.
is complicated, and culturally, economically, structurally, legally. I mean, it's tough. It's really tough. But then you know, China has entered a new era. They are going to dominate the world. They are going to be at the forefront of technology and in many different sectors. They are eager to earn respect from the world, and they need their revenge. So this is you know in I think in all domains, and we see it even in luxury, where the government is subsidizing young entrepreneurs to launch their luxury brand, fashion brand, and everything. So for the longest time, we said China cannot innovate, and I don't know if you remember that time, but that was they are only good at copying or whatever, which was so stupid. I mean, I've been to China for 35 years now, and those people were talking about it. I thought, like, well, they don't know what they are talking about. I 25 years ago, I was already kind of teaching my students when I was in Europe that, well, look out, they are going to create their luxury brand. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. And now,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many. Probably you read about Anta. It's
Yeah.
now the number three sports good company, and they are going to conquer the world. When you have the Nike, the Adidas, they are all manufactured in China. It's gonna be very difficult for
Just a matter of time,
say,
right?
oh, you shouldn't buy Anta, because it's manufactured in China. um, so yeah, I think it's gonna be very difficult for European brands to or Western brands. I mean, the new ones, to succeed in China, or to enter China successfully, because it's a very competitive market, and as you know, it costs a lot of money, to emerge from the clutter. There's so much content, so many brands, so many everything. It's like, how do you
Yeah.
make yourself visible? And it's not like the world is missing on a fashion brand or a cosmetic brand or anything. So
Mm-hmm.
at the same, on one end, it's easy to create a brand. No, you create an e-commerce site in 5 minutes. It doesn't cost
Yeah.
anything, and you can put content, and all this kind of free. But the problem is, like, to emerge from the notion of content and brand, and this is costing a lot of money. So in one way, the barriers to entries are very low, but actually succeeding is kind of more and more expensive. So now the Chinese customers, they are very well
Mm-hmm.
aware of their power, no, number one market, and so they are
Mm-hmm.
more demanding, and they want brands to respect them, and not even that, but probably to show genuine, respect, and probably also appreciation, and why not love? It's like so. Um, they also, there is this nationalistic sentiment that is there, and it's continue to grow. um I I think it's gonna be difficult. It's I see, like, yeah, there are still opportunities for many brands because the market is so big. But as I said, emerging and being so successful and growing a business in China is gonna be it's gonna be difficult, and so you have to come up with an offering that it's very different, very innovative, but also very relevant to the audience. So it means that you need to know your customers and know Chinese customers and what they want and how they think, and be very careful, because even if you have good intentions, sometimes it could backlash. I mean, look at all those brands that have been caught in you know
Oh yeah.
like controversies. Non-luxury, I mean, the list is so long, so you really have to empower and trust your local teams to kind of do the right thing. I think now we are seeing the limitation of a model where everything is decided in Paris, Milan, and New York, and kind of pushed to the other markets. I think in China this is over. You really have to to have teams on the ground, and as I said, trust them, empower them to come up with the right strategy. And then if you are a young brand, I mean, imagine this is very costly, so probably difficult, or you have to rely on partners and things
Yeah, I
like
think it's
this.
one of those. It's
So
you see this. There's this phrase, this pot of gold, right at the end of the rainbow. Like it looks really appealing, but I think it's actually quite treacherous. Or not treacherous, but just
yeah,
a lot of risk, right, associated with it. Yeah, I've always go ahead,
and
go ahead.
and yeah, for for established brands, they will have to kind of bend, I guess, to the Chinese government's,
Yeah,
desiderata, because want to be, they have all powers. I mean, we see that with what they do now today with Alibaba. They want to dismantle Alipay. I was
crazy.
reading this morning. It's so it's okay. You want to come and take advantage of a huge market? Okay, fair enough. But then you have to play with our rules. You have to comply with our rules. So and we start seeing that, like Nike, Adidas, they have been very quiet. They have kind of
Hmm.
laid low, on
Yeah,
some issues. And so your economic interests are at stake. So
it's tough.
yeah,
It's tough.
it's
Yeah, I wonder kind of long term. The thing I've always questioned about the concept of kind of Chinese dominance or whatever, however we want to phrase it, is it's such a closed economy, closed culture, closed ecosystem that it's just hard to imagine that spreading broadly, right? Without being like, it's like part of the reason that I think the U.S. has become, or has historically been, one of the dominant cultural icons is that there's a lot of people from a lot of different cultures that live here, right? And that translates back, right? That spreads, that message spreads, that identity spreads. Versus, there's not a lot of people that of different cultures living in China. This is not, right, on a percentage basis. It's much smaller. And so, but we don't have to get into that for today. Okay, so let's get to one fun end of show question. So I see you have a logo on your shirt, and I'm curious uh, if there were, say, three brands that are connected to your identity, or that you connect with, I should say. What would be the three brands? And this can be by spend or ethos or whatever you want to, whatever you want. I think spend is the most interesting. Just what are you spending the most on? If there were a few brands, but yeah, what I'd love to hear that answer for you. It's not an
okay.
easy one.
So that that's a very interesting question. So
Yeah.
I study luxury brands, but I consider myself as a core luxury consumer. So I there are brands that I love and that I prefer. So I can talk about that. So obviously, being French, I am influenced by the French brand. I'm somebody that is more kind of probably discreet, and yeah, I like my anonymity, my privacy. So I like those
Yeah. Yeah.
invisible brands. Like I love Hermes, for instance. Very classical. I mean, stay there forever. Not too ostentatious. I think they
They literally don't have, we've met with them. They don't have a marketing department. There's no marketing, there's no promotion. They have a clienteling team, which kind of operates in that way. But yeah, it's a very interesting setup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I love food, so I spend a lot of money on what probably people would call luxury food. So I
Yeah.
want the best chocolates from you know.
What is the best chocolate? I have to buy it. You've said it.
So
What is it? What's the
I
name?
discovered this, uh, you know, this small chocolatier I mean, through friends of mine this summer in Lyon, and I forgot the name, but I need to go back on that. But yeah, I love Marcolinier in Belgium. I think this is amazing. Here in the US, I am stuck with Valrhona, which is already, a very good choice because the quality is really there. Like, yeah, and very interesting model, family business. Then they develop through retail,
Yeah.
travel retail, and also um, B2B business, so they are kind of the supplier of the best restaurant or those type of things. So, but I love tea, so I buy luxury tea for Fauchon, Ediard, or Mariage Frère, So I mean, it's very. I mean, I spend a lot of money there, and my husband like wine, so he buys a lot of wine. But yeah, I buy a lot of books actually. This is probably the most. I'm
Ah.
not a fashion person, so I don't. I prefer to buy actually fewer items, but high quality, durable, something classical that I will wear. A lot of time. um, but yeah, I love food. I used to travel a lot, so that would be probably where I spend in terms of spend, as you said.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
if you add up, the travel and the hotels and things like this. So I love Amman Resorts. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
luxury brand, luxury hotel brand that I love. Ritz Carlton, I like. Four Seasons as well. Those would be my favorite probably.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm like, so happy with how that question turned out. Well, hopefully we can break bread soon, and I can drink some of your husband's good wine and eat your good chocolate. That would be great.
You are welcome to visit anytime. I mean, it's always a pleasure to see you. So whenever you are in Boston, please come and visit us.
I will. I will. Thank you so much for taking the time out today. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else did too. And yeah, and I will see you soon,
Thank you
hopefully.
very much for your invitation, Conor. Thank you.
Of course. Bye. Bye, Sandrine.
Hit subscribe now. Earned by Tribe Dynamics. Tribe Dynamics unlocks your social media influencer community. Our platform not only tracks and measures your best influencer relationships, but discovers new influencers to grow your business through earned media. Get started with a demo today at tribedynamics.com. tribedynamics.com.